arts, the more highly developed a technique is, the more vulnerable it becomes. Keep this in mind in all of nature, in all of life. When do you ever have perfect conditions? When does the wind blow exactly the right speed? When does your opponent stand exactly the right distance? When does your body feel exactly the right way? Never. And this is where the disparity between practice and combat turns into a chasm in the training hall. We manufacture artificial conditions. We train on smooth floors in good light with cooperative partners. We analyze complicated movements into bite-sized chunks. This is required for learning, yes, but it becomes a trap when we confuse these training parameters with reality. Real combat is messy, it's chaotic. It occurs on uneven terrain, in bad light, against our opponents who don't care about your perfect form. Your methods must work not only in the controlled environment of the but. In the unpredictable chaos of life, I've seen too many. Martial artists build their house on the sand of perfectionism. They build magnificent castles of technique, never realizing that the foundation itself is defective. They mistake the finger pointing at the moon for the moon music. The technique is not the goal, it is merely the vehicle. This obsession with perfect technique is akin to trying to learn swimming by practicing strokes on dry land. You can master every move, study every angle, master every position. At the instant you enter the water, everything alters the nature. Water requires something else from you than what you learned on land. True growth in martial arts comes not from the learning of technique, but from understanding principles, not from memorization of forms, but from inner ideas, not from the mastering of technical perfection, but from the gaining of technical perfection, but from the gaining of flexible power. This is the first significant illusion. That we need to get out of the path to mastery isn't paved with perfect technique. It is forged through understanding, adaptation, and sincere expression of principle. The most dangerous prison is the one not seen in my decade of teaching. I've seen a great deal more stifling than any physical restraint, the psychic lock of perfectionism. It's a prison that the mind builds with fear and guarded by illusion of what martial arts ought to be. I see it in their eyes before I even see it in their movement, the hesitation, the doubt, the constant dialogue. Second, guessing every motion is my angle, right is my stance, low enough. Am I doing this just right? By the time they've finished this mental torture, the time to act has already elapsed. Their body knows what to do, but their mind has become their jail. This prison is physical as well, too. Witnessed students contort themselves into perfect stances that actually hinder their movement. They introduce tension where there ought to be fluidity, rigidity where there ought to be flow. Their pursuit of perfect form has literally immobilized their bodies into patterns that exclude natural response. They've sacrificed their freedom for an illusion of control. Let me tell you something that occurred in my school in Oakland. A senior student, a technically genius, was rehearsing a demonstration for weeks. He practiced his forms until each movement was flawless. But the evening before the demonstration, I caught him still at the Quan, practicing the same routine he'd done thousands of times. When I asked him why, he said, "I'm afraid it won't be perfect tomorrow. This is the poison of perfectionism. It instills such a fear. It paralyzes innovation." This student was so imprisoned, afraid of imperfection, that he couldn't enjoy how his obsession was stifling his joy, his creativity, his growth. He'd become like an artist, so fear of mistake that he never puts brush to canvas. The physical constraints of perfect form are tension, predictability, lack of adaptability. Buck the mental prison. Where the harm actually occurs, I've had students with incredible potential never develop a style of their own because they're too afraid to bother with anything other than perfect technique. They're good copyists, but incompetent artists. I remember one student, a natural fighter with great instincts when it came to freestyle. Sparring, his movement was fluid, efficient living. But the instant when I called it training, he would change, becoming wooden, mechanical, dead. The very thought of good training would switch on his prison guard, mind trapping his natural ability behind bars of perceived perfection. This is probably the greatest tragedy in Ma arts practitioners who shut up their own innovation. In cells of normal thinking, they smother their natural reactions, deny their instincts, and present their own expression on the altar of perceived perfection. The worst thing about this prison is that many confuse it with discipline. They believe their perfectionism is the secret to mastery, never even realizing it's actually the obstacle. True discipline isn't about perfect reproduction. It's perfect honesty with yourself, my friend. See this. Every moment of anxiety over perfection is a second taken from growth. Every natural reaction, suppressed in the interest of proper form, is a piece of your martial soul caged. Every innovative urge, suppressed in the interest of tradition, is another stone in your prison wall. The first step toward freedom is recognizing these bars for what they are: not standards of merit, but boundaries of expression. Your prison guard isn't tradition or your mentor or even your art. The guard is your own mind infested with the virus of perfectionism. The moment of liberation begins with a simple truth. Your so-called mistakes are not your enemies. They are your guides, I discovered. This truth watching a young student named David in my Oakland school. For months, he struggled to kick like me, to move like me, until one day in frustration, he threw a kick in his own natural way. It was nothing like my kick. It was better. Not because it was technically perfect. Since it was totally his in that instance, both of us switched. I realized in the motion what I'd been endeavoring. Teaching all along, the power of real putting into his kick was imitation of something else's output. It was initiation of his own. Within that blunder, he found out about his very first notion of freedom. Liberation is all about getting knowledge. Your ordinary movement cannot be adjusted to it. It is a thing that needs to be improved in vision in terms of handwriting. We all learn to write the same basic letters, but each person's hand acquires its own individual character. Your fighting form must remain just the same. The basics are universal, yes, but your application of them must be uniquely yours. I remember another student, Sarah, who was endowed with incredible speed, but continued to try to fight like her more powerful classmates. She would come to me upset, saying, I'm doing it wrong. But she wasn't doing it wrong. She was just doing someone else's right. The day she accepted her natural speed, ceased trying to be a power fighter, and developed her own flowing style, she became truly formidable. Your body tells its own truth. If you can bring yourself to listen. Every person I've ever trained has natural tendencies, ways of moving, which feel inherently right to them. These are not flaws to be corrected, they're building blocks to be built on. When you stifle these natural movements in the name of perfect technique, you're not simply limiting your body, you're deceiving your own martial truth. I've seen this alter. Hundreds of times a student stops trying to move like a martial arts movie, stop trying to measure up to some ideal image, and begins to have faith in their own instincts. Suddenly their movement comes alive. What they give up in surface, perfection they gain in actual power. Their techniques are less predictable, more adaptive, more real. This journey to authenticity isn't easy. It takes courage to trust yourself when everyone else is chasing an ideal. It takes the wisdom to know that your perceived weaknesses often conceal your greatest strengths. But above all, it requires the humility to feel that your way won't look like anyone else's way, and that's just the way it is. Let me talk about James. James, a student who came to me after 20 years of traditional training. His forms perfect, his techniques flawless, but he felt empty within one day in sparring. He was hit with a surprise attack and reacted instinctively, not with his trained techniques, but with a move that came naturally to him. At the time, his face lit up with understanding. He had achieved something real, something true, something his. This is the path to freedom, not through mindless repetition of ideal forms, but through conscious seeking of your own truth. Your errors aren't failures, they're tests. Your natural inclinations aren't flaws, they're signatures. Your personal expressions aren't flaws, they're your art made real. Remember, water doesn't strive to flow ideally, it just flows naturally. And in that naturalness finds its best way. Your movement, your art, your expression should do the same. Don't try to be perfect. Try to be real. The perfection will take care of itself. True mastery reveals itself not in perfection of technique, but in the perfection of expression. This is a revelation that changes everything. The moment you realize that mastery isn't about becoming someone else's ideal, but about becoming the fullest version of yourself in combat, this truth becomes crystal clear. When you fight naturally, authentically, you tap into something that no amount of perfect technique can equal: unpredictability. Your opponents can train for textbook techniques, but they cannot train for your unique expression. This is where real effectiveness resides, not in the repeatability of your movements, but in their authenticity. I've observed this many times in real fights. The martial artist who moves with genuine expression, who has found their own style, possesses a power which transcends technique. They don't fight like everyone else. They fight like themselves, and in doing so, they attain a level of effectiveness that no level of technical perfection can achieve. Think of the great masters of the past. Each one was remembered not for how well they copied their teachers, but for how uniquely they represented their art. Their greatness did not stay in their conformity, but in their individuality. They became masters not by following paths, but by creating them. This is the paradox that few understand. Real freedom in martial arts does not come from learning more techniques. It comes from discovering your own way of expressing the techniques you already possess. It is like learning a language first. You learn the grammar, the vocabulary, the rules, but mastery emerges when you forget the rules and just talk from your heart. The real relationship between freedom and effectiveness is direct and profound. The freer you use your art, the more effective it grows. Why? Because real movement comes from your essence truth. It's not put with doubt, uncertainty, or artificial boundaries. It moves freely like water in search of its path. I've seen fighters with half the technical knowledge, twice as skilled, just because they fought with genuine express themselves. Their techniques were not flawless, but they were real. They weren't trying to be Bruce Lee or Wong Fei Hung or anyone else. They were being themselves, and in that reality was their strength. This is what I call combat applications of real movement. When you attack, don't attack like the manual attack. Like you attack when you defend. Don't defend like the book teaches. Defend in the way that your body would naturally want to move. Your instincts practiced and refined, but not to be substituted with, will bring you to exercises that work. And live. The genuine art of martial arts refers not to some extrinsic ideal of perfection, but to the perfect being of your own self. This is where your true strength comes from, not in the ability to clone, but in the courage to innovate, not in the perfection of form, but in the coherence of expression. Keep in mind, all the major martial artists began through the study of traditional forms, but they became great by going beyond them. They used the forms not as shackles to bone them, but as springs to drive them toward their own understanding. This is your path too, to learn the rules. You can go beyond them to understand the bends so profoundly that you can proceed beyond them. Your greatest strength will never be obtained from being a precise copy of someone else. It will be won from being the most completely genuine expression of yourself. This is the true path, not to accumulate techniques, but to purify them with the alchemy of your own being, until what emerges is uniquely, firmly, irrefutably yours now. We arrive at the essence of what I've been saying, the great paradox of martial arts and life itself. What we behold as imperfect has a tendency to contain within it the germ. True effectiveness, the vulnerability in the armor, becomes the spot of greatest flexibility. The visible flaw becomes the spot of special strength. Think well of this. When a flower grows up through concrete, it doesn't grow straight. It curves, twists, and bends in the process, growing stronger than any flower that blooms in ideal conditions. Its faults a testament to its vitality, its desire to live, its unshakable authenticity. This is just the manner in which your martial art should be. The equilibrium between practice and real life is not to be discovered in perfect copying. It's to be discovered in perfect copying. It's to be discovered in perfect adjustment. Yes, practice your methods. Yes, master your movements, but learn that this practice has nothing to do with acquiring some extrinsic idea of perfection. It has everything to do with acquiring the ability to express yourself sincerely, spontaneously, effectively. I've seen this reality unfold many times. The fighter who embraces their natural rhythm, even if it varies from the textbook, becomes more powerful than the one who fights by the book. The practitioner who listens to their instincts, even when they contradict tradition, discovers mixes that no manual could teach. This is the strength of authentic expression. There is pleasure in this revelation, a profound liberation in understanding that your path to mastery is not in becoming someone else's ideal, but in becoming increasingly more perfect yourself. When you stop fighting against your authentic nature and start struggling with it, everything smooths your movement, your reactions more instinctual, your power greater. Finish. This is my last message to you, my friend. Your greatest power lies not in your ability to conform, but in your ability to change. Not in your ability to copy, but in your willingness to innovate. Not in your drive for perfection, but in your acceptance of genuine acceptability. Stop trying to be perfect, start being real. Stop trying to be great, start being you, your imperfections, those special attributes that make you. These are not something to conquer. They are gifts to foster them. They are not things to conceal, but strengths to reveal. The manner in which I'm leading you isn't easy. It requires courage to be different, wisdom to trust yourself, and strength to be who you are in a world that at times requires conformity. But this manner, the manner of genuine expression, is the only one that results in authentic master. Remember, water in a cup is the cup. Water in a bottle is the bottle. Water in a teapot is the teapot. Water may flow or may crash, be like water. My friend, don't try to be perfect, be perfectly yourself. This is the warrior way. This is the path of true power. This is your way now. Go express yourself honestly. Fight naturally, live. Honestly, the perfect path is no path. Your way is the perfect way.